What's going on, guys? Kevin Cage here with another crypto update. I hope everyone's doing well, and let's dive in because I got back home, so we are back to our regular schedule. So we have some recent news going on today. We're going to go over XRP and Ripple. We'll talk a little bit about the liquidity cycles and any upcoming catalysts. So hit that like button and let's dive in. So first up, on this website, RWA.XYZ, this is the website where we can get a global market overview of total RWAs or real-world assets on-chain. So we're at over 18 billion today. So we've watched the RWAs on-chain climb from absolutely nothing over the past few years, but keep in mind that the prediction by BCG is a $16 trillion business opportunity by 2030. So say 18 billion divided by 16 trillion is 0.1%. So this is really just getting started, and we also know that better regulation leads to better infrastructure and more inflow. And the good news is over the past week we got news that the XRP Ledger is now integrated into this website, so we can keep track of the RWAs that are tokenized on-chain on top of the XRP Ledger. So just to show you really quick, if you go to rwa.xyz, then you click enter platform, you can come up here and then you can search XRP or the XRPL, and it should pop up right there, and you can click that and then check this out. So we have $50 million of tokenized value on-chain. And we know compared to other networks, this is a very small amount, so there is a lot of upside potential, but XRP's DeFi ecosystem, its tokenization ecosystem, is still very young, especially with the creation of the Ripple US dollar. So this is an important metric I think a lot of people are going to be tracking in the future as this number grows. And per usual, we're seeing a lot more discussions about Ripple and the SEC lawsuit nearing a resolution. We have Eleanor over at Fox Business citing right here, unnamed sources reported that both parties are engaged in settlement talks. And we have Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart Elderati, addressed the ongoing negotiations on March 11th, stating that Ripple's case was further along than others, as it already has a judgment and is in the appeals process. And I believe when we get a final resolution, it's going to be a huge deal for the XRPL and institutional adoption, which has only been growing, as we can see. Among a bunch of other things like the US Crypto Strategic Reserve and even XRP SPY ETFs, and I believe that we see at least one or a few XRP SPY ETFs this year. We have right here Brad Garlinghouse sharing Franklin Templeton files a prospectus for an XRP ETF. And I love this little breakdown of notable filings by iTrustCapital for an XRP SPY ETF by a variety of issuers. So we have Bitwise, Canary Capital, 21 Shares, and WisdomTree. So why do I keep saying that I believe we see an XRP SPY ETF this year? Because I'm comparing what we saw for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So for Bitcoin SPY ETFs, we saw a bunch of filings in mid-2023, and then they were later approved in January, so that was about 6 to 7 months. And even for Ethereum, thinking 6 to 12 months after several applications, I have similar expectations for XRP, especially if the SEC drags its feet. So even just loosely measuring from a lot of these dates and looking at 6 to 12 months after filings for XRP, that happens this year. In the worst case, it's delayed until Q1 of 2026. So those are my personal expectations, just based off the timelines that we saw for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and any of this can just come out of nowhere. So we have Brad Garlinghouse sharing a bunch of pictures and a big write-up the other day discussing the White House Crypto Summit. We have the CFTC CEO Roundtable, and then also the recent news of right here, the National Cryptocurrency Association. And try not to get lost in all the crazy headlines we're seeing, because this crypto agenda is only going to be bigger in the future, especially when we get price action. And this came out earlier this month. Ripple is proud to support the launch of the National Crypto Association. 55 million Americans hold and use crypto. And this association is a chain-agnostic, non-political nonprofit here to help by educating and raising awareness of all the utility that crypto technologies are bringing to real people. So we're going to keep tabs on this. You can learn more at nca.org. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen this news, but we absolutely have to cover this with this DFSA license to offer regulated blockchain-powered payments in the UAE. So right here, the DIFC is the Dubai International Finance Center. So Ripple, the company, receiving approval from the DFSA, which is the Dubai Financial Services Authority, to provide regulated crypto payments and services in the Dubai International Financial Center is a very big deal. Because it says right here, Ripple, the company, will be the first blockchain-enabled payments provider licensed by the DFSA. And if you visit the DIFC's website and visit the Who We Are or About page, we can see some info right here. So this financial center is absolutely massive, one of the world's most advanced financial centers, a leading financial hub for the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. So similar to the MENA region, MENA for the Middle East, Northern Africa region, this is MESA, right there. So this financial center has a 20-year track record of facilitating trade and investment flows, 77 countries with an approximate population of 3.7 billion, and an estimated GDP of $10.5 trillion. Going to the IMF data mapper, we can see global GDP right here in billions of dollars. So this is actually $115 trillion for global GDP. Now, don't really believe the inflation rate of 4% because they don't consider the debasement of currency of the US dollar getting weaker and weaker each year, but we can see the real GDP growth, so annual percentage of 3.2%. So assuming we stayed the same at 3 or 3.2%, over the next 5 years, that's at least $130 trillion in global GDP. Alright, so why am I talking about global GDP? Well, I want to pivot shortly and discuss M2 and global liquidity, but coming back to this image by BCG, total tokenized market to be 10% of global GDP by 2030. Now, I believe this was from 2022, so I would love to see a more updated version of this, but a lot of reports that I read today are still referencing this. And I believe 10% is actually very conservative, even if you're looking at today's GDP or future valuations, looking at 10 to 13 trillion in potential, absolutely. But at the same time, as we can see up here, BCG does share the best case scenario of this number, $68 trillion, which would be insane, especially when you consider how small we are today. And many companies reference this for the potential of the crypto asset class, but this report doesn't even include crypto assets. And whether you believe it or not, I do not believe all of these organizations that are tokenizing assets are going to be on private chains. They're going to be on public networks and be interoperable. I've done a lot of videos before going through the differences of public, private, and hybrid networks, and public networks absolutely have a place. Alright, now let's talk about what I believe is the most exciting thing to watch for the entire crypto asset class for Bitcoin and altcoins in a future alt season. It's global liquidity, or M2. Now, does M2 or global liquidity rising mean that GDP has to increase? Not necessarily, and it's not always direct, but M2 money supply, when it's expanding, can contribute to GDP growth. It really depends on how this new liquidity that's injected into the system is actually used. And feel free to actually Google what M2 is and how it's calculated. We've gone over it a few times before, but we can see a clear correlation when M2, the blue line, goes up, and Bitcoin. And usually, whether Bitcoin or M2 rises first, there is a clear correlation on the big picture for Bitcoin. But what's very interesting here is that M2 is actually rising and at new all-time highs, whereas Bitcoin has actually been pulling back. I'll move my cursor, but hopefully you can look right there. So Bitcoin is pulled back as M2 has risen. So anybody looking for another liquidity cycle, the higher that M2 goes up, the better, even if there's a lagging effect for Bitcoin. And when we're comparing the 2017 alt season and the 2021 alt season to today, where we haven't had an alt season, the crash of Bitcoin dominance, we're looking for catalysts. And I did a video a while back going through a bunch of potential bullet points that can serve as catalyst for another bull run with M2 rising. So you can type in, I believe it's how liquidity can enter. But really it could be anything. It could be interest rate cuts, it could be government debt and fiscal stimulus, it could be private credit expansion. There's so many different things. It could be a geopolitical crisis where different governments have to print to finance military budgets. It could be an economic crisis where central banks have to flood markets with liquidity to prevent a collapse. And the most important thing is, why are so many analysts confident in M2 or global liquidity going up? Because it's almost inevitable in order to keep the system going. Looking at debt levels and central bank policies, it basically shows that liquidity has to enter eventually. And if you look at past cycles, especially just the last 2 cycles as the crypto asset class is maturing, liquidity waves actually drive bull runs. Now, this is very interesting, shared by Colin Talks Crypto, and you can take it with a grain of salt and be careful to look at any specific date or week because nobody knows, but this is very interesting. So he's been sharing this global M2 money supply predictive correlation, so I want to highlight that the yellow right here is actually the real-time data of M2. So M2 is actually up, it has definitely climbed, whereas Bitcoin has come down. So I've covered this before, but with this tool, he's playing with different numbers to use an offset to look for a correlation, but I want to emphasize that this is not a future prediction. This yellow line of M2 is today's value, it has climbed. Now in these charts, he's looking at different offsets of 46 days, 69 days, and 70 days, looking at MicroStrategy. He's done similar things for Bitcoin. So I think this is definitely something to keep tabs on. I'd be hesitant to make a call and say it happens this week or this month and name an actual date, but on the big picture, this is a very good thing to see. So the most exciting thing out of all of this is M2, the yellow line, for a fact has risen, so global liquidity is taking off, and there's likely going to be a lagging effect eventually, hopefully sooner than later. And there probably is an offset right now that will match the wave, but it's really hard to predict consistently because it can always be different. Other than that, for Bitcoin, I'll probably do a much more detailed video going over the charts when we see the monthly close for this month of March, but we can see that we did open up above the 8-month EMA, so we're not going to get too much information this month, but I am interested to see where we can close. So what I mean by that is it's not like we're going to see this month's candle close entirely below the 8-month EMA because we are just around that level today and we did open above it, so we're looking at data of future months. So being mindful of any flash wicks similar to August 2024, but it's all about seeing each monthly candle body holding above this orange moving average, which is the 8 exponential moving average. So I expect some volatility to come out of nowhere, being careful for any backtest on 2024 or 2021, but if we are to follow the previous cycles, keeping above the 8-month EMA with monthly candle bodies, leading to this consolidation to a much bigger wave. So my expectations, right or wrong, and not financial advice to anybody else, is I expect us to get another liquidity cycle in the future where the monthly RSI takes out these previous highs of resistance and gets up to similar levels like the previous 3 cycles. So we're not quite there just yet. We can see that we did hit this resistance. My excitement will be when Bitcoin actually breaks through this resistance. We have never surpassed 80 with the monthly RSI for this cycle. And looking at price action for past cycles, when we get over 80, that is when Bitcoin really flies and the momentum is at an all-time high. Looking at different retracement levels of previous cycles, when we got that first major move into new highs above the previous cycle top, we can see boom, boom, retracing to a 50% in 2017. We have 2021 on the weekly time frame doing something similar. So we got the first major move, retracing to the 50%. And then looking at today, this is where it gets subjective because where do you draw the bottom of the Fibonacci retracement? If you did from here to there, we can see we retrace just below the 50%. If we move it right up to this level, we can see we came a little bit below the 50%, not quite the 618. Then I can also move it right there. So it gets very subjective because this isn't as clean as previous cycles. And just overall, I think this is important to consider. We don't know exactly when, but I'm going to turn the lights off looking at the last 2 alt seasons, the crash of Bitcoin dominance in 2017 and then 2021. So we haven't seen a crash and we have not seen another alt season just yet. And what I mean by that is we have Bitcoin dominance on the left side. So this is the percentage of Bitcoin's market cap compared to the entire crypto asset class. So Bitcoin's market cap is over 61% of all of the crypto asset class. During 2017, as Bitcoin dominance is crashing here on the left-hand side, I want you to look at the right-hand side. So Bitcoin dominance goes down as Bitcoin is going up. So Bitcoin is making higher highs as Bitcoin dominance crashes. That was alt season in 2017. Now, if we go back to last alt season in 2021, it's not just a drop, it is a massive crash. As it's crashing, what is Bitcoin doing right there? As we can see, Bitcoin is making higher highs as the crash is starting. Now, technically, Bitcoin did actually go on and create another higher high with bearish divergence, but we can still see a much bigger crash for Bitcoin dominance back to lows. So looking at this and just looking at the past alt seasons, that's what I'm looking for based on this relationship of looking for the crash and top of Bitcoin dominance. When Bitcoin dominance crashes, I want to see Bitcoin making higher highs. So hopefully that makes sense, guys, and I'll keep sharing my guesses, right or wrong, but the big picture is when Bitcoin dominance crashes as Bitcoin is going up, that is alt season. And alt season is that exciting period, whether it lasts 2 months or 6 months of pure mania where altcoins outperform the ROI of Bitcoin massively. Some move early, some move late, but that is the biggest potential, and I also want to emphasize the dates for XRP will go down to the weekly. These were the last 2 alt seasons for XRP. And this was during the actual crash of Bitcoin dominance from the top to the bottom. So we can see XRP here in 2017 going absolutely parabolic, and last cycle doing about a 10x. And you'll notice that XRP did retrace from the March 2020 low up to the highs before alt season even began. And this is my speculation, not financial advice for anybody else, but I'm looking at the market like XRP's retracement that we saw from November. This retracement is actually similar to this previous retracement. And similar to other alts as well, like HBAR, in that in alt season, a lot of assets have potential to go significantly higher. And I know some might ask, well, Kevin, XRP did a huge crash before last alt season. It's possible, but I thought that was primarily based on the announcement of the lawsuit by the SEC. And friendly reminder, guys, we have iTrustCapital linked in the top of the YouTube video description. I've had a crypto Roth IRA with them since January of 2020, and you can create a variety of retirement accounts. So for anybody interested in creating an account, check the links out in the video description. I have family and friends who use this all the time, and your contribution deadlines are up until April. And I also had this tab pulled up of the CEO of iTrustCapital, Kevin Maloney, during the White House Crypto Summit the other night, so a few weeks back. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, let me know your thoughts down below, and I will catch you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and let me know your thoughts down below. You can find all links to my crypto resources, including tools for charting, trading bots, wallets, portfolio trackers, and exclusive discounts right in my link tree in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.